believers, there was no war. We lived in the flesh. We were creatures of the flesh. There might have been reasons we didn't sin because of consequences. There was some common grace. To a degree, we have a conscience that's still operative that maybe didn't have us do certain things, but the temptations were not there the way they are after we get saved. After we get saved, what happens is the old self is done away with. It's crucified, and God gives us a new heart. He makes us a new creature in Christ. But the problem is we still have some of the leftover old man remaining within us. And that in the Bible is called the flesh. And the flesh is not as powerful as the spirit. And one day the flesh, the body will be fully redeemed and the flesh will be done away with. But that day doesn't happen until we enter the threshold of heaven and come to glory. So there's this continual battle that the Christian now has. The flesh is pulling you in one direction and the spirit is pulling you in the other direction. And the Bible calls us in Galatians 5 to wage a healthy war, to fight a good fight. If we give in, the flesh will dominate us. But if we walk in the Spirit, we can be victorious and have a life that honors Christ. About a month ago, my family and I went up to the top of the Sears Tower. Now it's called the Willis Tower in Chicago, but it used to be called the Sears Tower. We lived there about 30 years. And all 30 years of living in Chicago, I never went to the top of the Sears Tower, the tallest building in Chicago. We went up there and they built these glass boxes on the observation floor, maybe 103 floors, I think it is, up in the air. And these extend out from the building. So glass, if you can imagine, on the two sides, top, bottom, and the back side as well. Kids would just run out on this glass. Now again, imagine with me, you walk on this glass and you're looking straight down at Wacker Drive, 103 stories up in the air. Kids just bolt out there. But for the average adult, there's a conflict in your mind. Because part of your mind is saying, I see other people on the glass, so it must be safe. Obviously, the engineers designed this in such a way to make it safe. It's not going to allow me to fall vertically to my death. But yet in your mind, you also want to do it. But in your mind, you know that if you go out on that glass, you feel like you're stepping out into thin air. And there's this mental battle that takes place for probably about 30 seconds for every adult. I know it's safe, but it still looks dangerous, and I don't want to do it. And it's a mental game. And that's almost the same thing that I often think about when I think about the flesh and the spirit. There's a mental battle taking place where the mind is saying, I know the right thing to do is walk in the Spirit. I want to walk in the Spirit. I want to devote to God. I want to live my life for His glory. But yet there's still something in all of us, and we're liars if we're Christians and we don't admit to it, that sometimes we just want to feed that flesh. Maybe it's allowing the computer to go somewhere where we shouldn't permit it to go. Maybe it's entertaining fantasies in our mind. Maybe it's indulging in food or alcohol. We all have different temptations, but we all have that small desire still that still struggles with the flesh, that seems so satisfying. And that's the war we must wage to win that battle and continually walk in the Spirit of God. And only God can give us that strength. Only God can give us that desire, and only God can give us that victory. We don't do it in our own willpower, our own strength. It's abiding in Christ, and then He gives us that strength to be the people He wants us to be.